Okay, yeah, should we make a start? Right, okay. Most people know Oscar Wilde for his plays, his social comedies from the late 1800s. But he also wrote several children's stories for his own sons. And these are like fables, parables, because they have a very strong meaning about how we should behave toward each other. And you might have come across The Happy Prince, The Selfish Giant, The Rose and the Nightingale. This is The Star Child, and it's our version of The Star Child. It's a dramatic reading, and we are very fortunate to have John Henry, local musician, who's composed some music especially for our version of The Star Child, and he's here to play it for us. We've actually had a really sort of short period of putting this together because we've just finished the main youth theatre play last Saturday, and so we've just worked on this Sunday, Wednesday and Friday, and this is our result, and this is only half of the youth theatre. Okay, are we ready?
The Star Child by Oscar Wilde.
Once upon a time, two poor woodcutters were making their way home through a great pine forest.
It was winter and a night of bitter cold.
The snow lay thick upon the ground and upon the branches of the trees. So cold was it that even the animals and the birds did not know what to make of it.
On and on went the two woodcutters, stamping with their huge iron-shod boots upon the caked snow. Once they sank into a deep drift, and once they slipped on the hard, smooth ice where the marsh water was frozen. And once they thought that they had lost their way, and a great terror seized them.
For they knew that the snow is cruel to those who sleep in her arms.
But at last, they reached the outskirts of the village, and saw, far down in the valley beneath them,
The lights of the village in which they dwelt.
So overjoyed were they at their deliverance that they laughed aloud. And the earth seemed to them like a flower of silver, and the moon like a flower of gold.
Yet, after they laughed, they became sad, for they remembered their poverty, and one of them said to the other,
Why do we make merry, seeing that life is for the rich, and not for such as we are? Better that we had died of cold in the forest, or that some wild beast had fallen upon us and slain us.
It is true, much is given to the few and little is given to others. Injustice has parceled out this world, nor is there equal division of anything. Sorrow.
But as they were bewailing their misery, a strange thing happened.
There fell from heaven a very bright and beautiful star.
It slipped down the side of the sky, passing by other stars in its course.
And as they watched it, it seemed to them to sink behind a clump of willow trees, no more than a stone's throw away.
Why, there is a crop of gold for whoever finds it!
They cried, and they set off and ran. So eager were they for the gold. And one of them forced his way through the willows and came out on the other side. And there was indeed a thing of gold lying on the white snow.
It was a cloak, embroidered with stars and wrapped in many folds.
And he cried out to his comrade,
I have found the treasure that has fell from the sky!
And when his comrade had come up, they sat down in the snow.
And loosened the folds of the cloak, they might divide the pieces of gold.
But alas, no gold was in it, nor silver, nor indeed treasure of any kind, but only a little child who was asleep.
And one of them said to the other,
This is a bitter ending to our hope. What doth the child profit a man? Let us leave it here and go our way, seeing that we are poor men and have children of our own whose bread we may not give to another.
But his companion answered him,
Nay, it is an evil thing to leave the child to perish here in the snow. And though I am as poor as you are, and have many mouths to feed, and but little in the pot, I will take the child home with me, and my wife shall have care of it.
So very tenderly he took up the child and wrapped the cloak around it to shield it from the harsh cold, and made his way down the hill to the village.
but his comrade marvelled much at his foolishness and softness of heart.
And when his wife opened the door and saw that her husband had returned safely, she put her arms round his neck and kissed him.
And brushed the snow off his boots, and bade him come in.
But he said to her,
I have found something in the forest, and I have brought it to thee to have care of it.
What is it? Show it to me, for our house is bare, and we have need of many things. Then he drew the cloak back and showed her the sleeping child. Alack, goodman, have we not children enough of our own, which we must bring another child to sit by our hearth? And who knows if it will not bring us bad fortune, and how shall we tend it?
But it is a star child.
He answered, and he told her the strange manner of the finding of it.
But she would not be appeased, but mocked him and spoke angrily and cried,
Our own children lack bread, so how shall we feed the child of another? Who is there to careth for us, and who giveth us food?
Nay, but God careth for the sparrows, and feedeth them.
After a time, she turned round and looked at him. There were tears in her eyes.
and he placed the child in her arms, and she kissed it, and laid it in a little bed where the youngest of their own children was lying.
And on the morrow the woodcutter took the curious cloak and placed it in a great chest. And a chain of amber that was round the child's neck I took and placed it in the chest also. So the star child was brought up with the children of the woodcutter and became their playmates.
And every year he became more beautiful to look at, so that all those who dwelt in the village were filled with wonder.
He was white and delicate as sawn ivory, and his curls were like the rings of the daffodil. His lips were like the petals of a red flower, and his eyes were like violets by a river of pure water.
Yet did his beauty work him evil, for he grew proud, cruel, and selfish.
The children of the woodcutter he despised.
You are of mean parentage, while I am noble, being sprung from a star, and I shall make myself master over you all, and call you my servants.
No pity had he for the poor, or for those who were blind, or maimed or in any way afflicted, but he would throw stones at them, and drive them forth onto the highway, and bid them beg their bread elsewhere.
Go away. Go and beg elsewhere. We don't want you here.
Often we did chide the boy, saying,
Wherefore art thou so cruel to all who need pity?
but himself he loved only. And in the summer he would lie by the well in the orchard of the priest,
And looked down at the marvel of his own face.
and laugh for the pleasure he had in his beauty.
Now there passed one day through the village a poor beggar woman. Her garments were torn and ragged, and her feet were bleeding from the rough road on which she had travelled.
And being weary, she sat down under a chestnut tree to rest.
But when the star child saw her, he said to his companions,
See, there is a foul beggar woman under that tree. Come, let us drive her hence, for she is ugly and ill-favoured.
So he came near and threw stones at her and mocked her. And she looked at him with terror in her eyes.
But when the woodcutter saw what the Star Child was doing, he ran up and rebuked him and said to him,
Surely thou art hard of heart, for what evil has this poor woman done to thee, that you should treat her in this way?
And the Star Child grew red with anger and stamped his foot upon the ground and said,
Who art thou to question me what I do? I am no child of thine to do thy bidding.
Thou speakest truly. Yet did I show thee pity when I found thee in the forest?
And when the woman heard these words, she gave a loud cry and said to the woodcutter,
Did you not say that the child was found in the forest? And was it not 10 years from this day?
Yes, it was in the forest that I found him, and it was 10 years from this very day.
And what signs didst thou find with him? Did he not have upon his neck a chain of amber? Was not round him a cloak embroidered with stars?
Truly, it is even as thou sayest. For here is the cloak of stars and the chain of amber.
And when she saw them, she wept for joy and said,
He is my little son whom I lost in the forest. I pray thee send for him quickly, for in search of him have I wandered over the whole world.
So the woodcutter and his wife went out and called to the Star Child and said to him,
Go into the house.
And there you will find thy mother, who is waiting for you.
but when he saw who was waiting there, he laughed and said,
Where is my mother? For I see none here but this vile beggar woman.
And the woman answered him,
I am thy mother.
Thou art mad to say so. I am no son of thine, for thou art a beggar, and ugly, and in rags. Therefore, get thee hence, and let me see thy foul face no more.
Nay, but you are indeed my little son. Therefore I pray thee come with me, for over the whole world have I wandered in search of thee.
But the Star Child shut the doors of his heart against her, and he spoke to her, and his voice was hard and bitter.
If in very truth thou art my mother, it is better you had stayed away and not come here to bring me to shame, seeing that I thought I was the child of some star and not a beggar's child. Therefore, get thee hence, and let me see thee no more.
So she went away into the forest weeping bitterly, and the Star Child was glad and ran back to play with his friends.
But when they beheld him returning, they mocked him and said,
Why, you look as foul as the toad and as loathsome as the adder. Get thee hence, for we will not suffer thee to play with us.
and they chased him out of the garden.
and the Star Child frowned and said to himself,
What is this that they say to me? I will go to the well and look into it, and it shall tell me of my beauty.
So he went to the well and looked into it, and saw that his face was the face of a toad, and his body was scaled like an adder. And he flung himself onto the grass and wept, and said to himself,
Surely this has come upon me by reason of my sin, for I have denied my mother, and driven her away, and been proud and cruel to her. Therefore I will go and seek her through the whole world, nor will I rest till I have found her.
So he ran away into the forest and called out to his mother, but there was no answer. All day long he called to her,
Mother! Mother!
and when the sun set, he lay down to sleep on a bed of leaves.
and the birds and the animals fled from him, and he was alone, save for the toad that watched him, and the slow adder that crawled past.
And when he passed through the villages, the children mocked him and threw stones at him, so foul was he to look at. There was none who had pity on him.
Nor could he hear anywhere of the beggar woman who was his mother, though for the space of 3 years he wandered over the world. But it was even such a world as he had made for himself in the days of his great pride.
One evening he came to the gate of a strong walled city that stood by a river. But the soldiers who stood on guard said roughly to him,
What is thy business in the city?
I am seeking for my mother. I pray you to allow me to enter. for it may be that she is in this city.
But they mocked at him.
Truthfully, thy mother will not be merry when she sees thee, for thou art more ill-favoured than the toad of the marsh, or the adder that crawls in the fen.
Get thee gone. Thy mother dwells not in this city.
And an old man who was passing by called out and said,
I will take him for my servant.
and he took the star child by the hand and led him into the city. And on the morrow, the old man, who was indeed the subtlest of the magicians, and had learned his art from one who dwelt in the tombs of the Nile, came in to him and said,
In a wood that is close to the gates of the city, there are 3 pieces of gold. Today thou shalt bring me those 3 pieces of gold. And if thou bringest them not back, I will beat thee with 100 stripes.
and having opened the little door, he set him in the street.
And the star child went out of the gate of the city and came to the wood which the magician had spoken to him.
But he could not find anywhere in the wood the piece of gold of which the magician had spoken.
Thus, at sunset, the star child set his face towards home, weeping bitterly, for he knew the fate that was in store for him.
But when he had reached the outskirts of the wood, he heard from a thicket a cry, as of someone in pain.
And forgetting his own sorrow, he ran back to the place and saw there a little hare caught in a trap that some hunter had set for it.
And the star child had pity on it, and released it and said to it,
I am myself but a slave, yet may I give thee thy freedom.
And the hare answered him and said,
Surely thou hast given me freedom. What shall I give thee in return? And the star child said to it, I am seeking for pieces of gold, and if I bring them not to my master, he will beat me. Come thou with me, and I will lead thee to it.
So the star child went with the hare, and in the cleft of a great oak tree he saw the pieces of gold that he was seeking.
And he was filled with joy and seized it and said to the hare,
The small kindness that I showed thee, thou hast repaid 100-fold. As thou dealt with me, so I did deal with thee.
and the hare ran away swiftly. And so the star child set out towards the city.
Now, at the gate of the city, there was seated a leper. Over his face hung a cowl of grey linen, and when he saw the star child coming, he called out to him and said,
Give me a piece of money, please, or I must die of hunger. For they have thrown me out of this city, and there is no one who has pity on me.
Alas, I have but 3 pieces of gold in my wallet, and if I bring them not to my master, he will beat me, for I am his servant. But the leper entreated him till the star child had pity, and gave him the pieces of gold.
Now, as the star child passed through the gate of the city, the guards bowed down to him, and a crowd of citizens followed him and cried out,
Surely there is none so beautiful in the whole world.
So that the star child said to himself,
They are mocking me, and making light of my misery.
He found himself at last in a great square, in which there was a palace of a king. And the gate of the palace opened, and the high officers of the city ran forth to meet him and said,
Thou art the king for whom we have been waiting.
And the star child answered them and said, I am the child of a poor beggar woman. How say ye that I am beautiful? For I know that I am evil to look at.
Then one of the soldiers held up his shield and cried,
How says my lord that he is not beautiful?
And the star child looked. His face was as it had been, and his comeliness had come back to him. And he saw in his eyes something which he had not seen there before.
And the high officers said to him,
Accept this crown and this scepter, and be, in his justice and mercy, our king over us.
But he said to them, I am not worthy, for I have denied the mother who bore me, nor may I rest till I have found her and won her forgiveness. Therefore, let me go, for I must wander again over the world, and may not stay here.
And as he spoke, he turned his face from them towards the street and amongst the crowd that pressed around the soldiers.
He saw the beggar woman who was his mother, and at her side stood the leper who had sat by the road.
And a cry of joy broke from his lips. And he ran over, and kneeling down, he kissed the wounds on his mother's feet, and wet them with his tears. He bowed his head in the dust and said to her,
Mother, I denied thee in the hour of my pride. Accept me in my hour of humility. Mother, I gave thee hatred. Do thou give me love?
But the beggar woman answered him not a word.
And he reached out his hands and clasped the white feet of the leper and said to him,
Please, bid my mother speak to me just once.
but the leper also answered him not a word.
And the beggar woman put her hand on his head and said to him,
Rise.
And he rose up and looked at them, and they were a king and a queen.
And the queen said to him, This is thy father whom thou hast helped.
And the king said,
This is thy mother, whose feet thou hast washed with thy tears.
and they kissed him and brought him into the palace.
and set the crown upon his head, and the scepter in his hand.
And over the city that stood by the river he ruled, and was its lord.
Much justice and mercy did he show to all, and to the woodcutter and his wife he sent many rich gifts.
Nor would he suffer any cruelty to bird or beast, but taught loving kindness and charity. And to the poor he gave bread, and to the naked he gave clothes.
And there was peace and plenty in the land.
Yet ruled he not long, for so great had been his suffering, and so bitter the fire of his testing. For after the space of 3 years he died.
And he who came after me was indeed an evil despot. The Star Child by Oscar Wilde. Thank you.